Our top story this hour then, President Donald Trump has blamed what he calls kamikaze Democrats for the longest US government shutdown ever as it topped the 35-day record set during his first term. Trump then telling Republican senators at the White House that the ongoing shutdown is impacting the stock market as well as airlines and food benefits for low-income Americans. Well, Donald Trump speaking a day after US voters delivered a clean sweep of top contests to Democrats. Let's speak more about this. We have in the studio with us our international affairs editor, Philip Tell. Hello to you, Philip. We're also joined by Ian Reifowitz. He's a distinguished professor of history at the sunny Empire State University and the co-author of Riling Up the Base, examining Trump's use of stereotypes through an interdisciplinary lens. Welcome to you both. Philip, if I start with you there, a lot of blame being levelled by Donald Trump at the Democrats, both for the shutdown, but equally for those losses in top contest yesterday.
Well, there are a couple of points which are important to underline here. First of all, that the speech that Donald Trump made just a few minutes ago in front of Republican leaders, it was typical Donald Trump. He will point the finger at the Democrats. Basically, the Democrats, as you were saying, are a group of kamikazes who are kamikaze pilots who are responsible for the shutdown, the longest shutdown in US history, 36 days today since it started, still no end in sight. And then saying that basically, as far as the elections were concerned, insinuating over the past couple of days that what the Democrats want to do is to rig the election campaign so that it's going to be false and they will be cheating, and saying basically that these people don't want things to go smoothly. What they want is to cheat. The second point is that there's no questioning. There's no looking in the mirror to wonder why things are going that way. Was it anything to do with Donald Trump's own policies? So it's the typical image of Donald Trump summed up by the fact that after the election victories of the Democrats, he was saying, well, there are two reasons that the Republicans didn't win last night. The first one is because there is this shutdown, which is now in its 36th day. And the second reason is because the name Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot, citing election officials, although we don't know which election officials he was talking about.
I mean, Ian, if we bring you in here, we had a Trump that, was clean to fire off in terms of critics towards the Democrats. A rather muted response, though, not the Trump perhaps as jovial as we might always have. And he certainly didn't want to answer questions about those defeats to Democrats.
I mean, it's hard to know exactly what's going through his mind at any given moment. I think these results were worse, certainly, than he expected. The Republicans expected to lose, certainly the Virginia race. I think they had some hope in New Jersey, but they were blown out of the water in both of those states. The governors, the newly elected governors outperformed Kamala Harris in both of those states by around 10 points for elections only 1 year ago. That's a huge difference. And not to miss out on a few other places. Democrats flipped 2 seats in deep red Georgia on an important election commission, and they won those seats 60-40. Next year, there are U.S. Senate elections in Georgia. Democrat John Ossoff is running for re-election in a very tricky state for Democrats is a 50-50 state at best. Democrats won those races 60-40. So if Trump is muted, I think it's because his party did even worse than he expected.
I mean, Philip, all of these points to the fact that there's going to be, very competitive midterm primaries coming up. And of course, the pointing, if you will, to the 2028 presidential elections ultimately.
Well, I think the big question now is, can this momentum carry on? The most important thing for the Democrats is that the hard part starts now. The hard part starts on delivering those election pledges, particularly when it comes down to what we've heard in New York from Zohran Mamdani about free bus travel, giving greater child care and settling low budget rents for people. He's going to have to get the money from somewhere to follow up on those pledges. There is visibly a thirst for change. The question is, can what we've seen in New York, which is a bit like a microstate within the United States, be transferred elsewhere in the US? Is this a sign of momentum that can go to other areas of the US to the detriment of the Republican Party and to the detriment of Donald Trump? Or are we just seeing a phenomenon in certain areas of the US where the stars were all aligned in the right manner for the Democrats. I think that is the important point right now. But this is certainly a huge win for the Democrats, much more than they were expecting yesterday. Can they keep this momentum up between now and the midterm elections? In other words, can the populist left-wing policies of what we've seen in New York act as a counterbalance to the populist right-wing policies of Donald Trump and the Republican Party right now?
I think you make an interesting point, Ian, if I can come back to you on that. I mean, supposedly, if Mamdani is able to hold on to these promises, this blueprint, as you will, that he's put forward with, working for, working class New Yorkers. It would be a great blueprint for other cities if he manages to keep those promises. If he doesn't, though, it could be a warning against progressives, no?
Well, the thing is that Mamdani and New York City is not most of America. Republicans would love for the next 3 years to be Donald Trump versus Zohran Mamdani, right? But Zohran Mamdani and is only one person who was elected last night. He actually, and it's not exactly the same comparison, but he actually underperformed Kamala Harris in New York City compared to a year ago. Whereas, as I said, the Democrats in Virginia and New Jersey overperformed. I think it's more the case that the candidates in New Jersey and Virginia represent where the Democrats are going to go across the country. Rahm Emanuel, a leading Democrat, actually said last night, I'm less interested in the Upper West Side, referring to New York City and Manhattan, a famously liberal area, and more interested in the Upper Peninsula, which is an important area in Michigan. It's just a swing state. And I think that's where Democrats are going to be focused. Mamdani is important because he needs to show that he can govern well in New York City, but he is not going to be the face of the Democratic Party heading into the midterms or the presidential election.
All right, well, let's stay with Mamdani. We're going to watch a report looking back at his victory as, the next mayor of New York. This clean sweep then that we've been talking about of top contests among several ballots nationwide, delivering, of course, a morale boost for Democrats and perhaps an early warning to President Trump.
Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
A victory speech made in New York, but with a target audience in Washington. Zohran Mamdani wasted no time taking on the U.S. president after he won the city's race for mayor.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him.
Mamdani's victory is historic. The 34-year-old son of immigrants had no name recognition when he joined the race. And even though he won the Democratic primary back in June, its establishment failed to fully embrace him. Mamdani was forced to rely on the party's progressive wing as he pledged to make New York more affordable.
New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change. In this moment of political darkness, New York will be the light.
Uganda-born Mamdani has lived in New York most of his life, and on Tuesday he celebrated the city's diversity, with him poised to be the first Muslim and first person of South Asian descent to lead.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
Mamdani's victory was celebrated by New Yorkers young and old, many pointing to the fact that he's been able to do what mainstream politicians have failed at even before assuming office.
He has directly addressed Trump and his abuse and power. Congress has failed to do so. Mamdani has now placed himself above Congress as a national leader, and he hasn't even taken office yet.
His policies are great. He's energetic. He's not afraid to stand up to the system and the president, and I think that's really refreshing.
As Mamdani's rise reverberates in New York and around the United States, the U.S. president took to social media. Donald Trump writing, "And so it begins," suggesting he's gearing up for a fight.
Ian, if I bring you back in here, just before that report, you pointed out that, he may be the face currently of New York, but won't ultimately be the face of the Democratic Party. I just want to come back on his rise. For you, what does Mamdani symbolize, and where does that rise come from?
Well, first of all, he is an exceptionally good politician. He is very good at listening and responding to the needs of the people that he is courting. That's voters, and they were laser focused on affordability. And his campaign, although he did, has in his lifetime talked about other issues, international issues, issues relating to race, gender, immigration, his campaign was really focused on affordability, rent reduction, rent freeze, free buses, and other things that the government can do to make, including free childcare for those under the age of 3, things that they can do to make the city more affordable. That was the issue that he ran on, and it was very successful. That is an issue more broadly that can play throughout America, maybe not with the same exact solutions. Having said that, he had in Andrew Cuomo, an incredibly flawed opponent, somebody who was strong enough to maybe knock out other mainstream Democrats, but because of his own background, his many credible accusations of sexual assault against him, was strong enough to knock out opponents, but not strong enough to actually defeat somebody like Mamdani, who really is a better and more attractive politician. So Mamdani benefited from that. Having said that, he did come out of nowhere, and his win is very impressive. The real question is, how much can he get done economically? Because with the rules and laws of New York State, he has to go through the state legislature for funding for a lot of his programs. Not going to be easy.
So an uphill battle there in terms of getting some of those policies or promises, as you will, into play. One of the things that Mamdani was able to do was to kind of highlight the internal divisions within the Democratic Party. So those who are kind of more centrist, those who are looking towards a more leftist future for the Democrats. There were lukewarm endorsements, it has to be said, from some very high profile national figures. What do you make of that?
Well, it makes sense if you think about people who have a national role to play. Let's focus on Chuck Schumer, senator from New York, yes, but also leader of the Democrats in the Senate. So if he's going to endorse Mamdani, then he has to try to recruit, let's say, a Senate candidate to challenge Republicans in a difficult state, like, let's say, Texas or Florida. It's a lot harder for him to do that if he's somebody who endorsed Zohran Mamdani, a Democratic Socialist. So in the end, I think they're all trying to walk that fine line. Mamdani, it looked like he was going to win this election. He did win this election, maybe not by as much as the polls showed, but still impressively 9-10 points. But his name and his policies don't play well in the rest of America. It was not an easy decision, I think, for some of these leading Democrats to make. Governor Hochul of New York did endorse him and did appear with him, because I think she realized she needs his help, or at least the support of his voters next year when she's running for re-election in New York. Whether not endorsing Mamdani will hurt Schumer in an election campaign in New York next year against a Democrat in a primary, that remains to be seen. We'll have to see if Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tries to run against him.
I want to think about Trump for a second, because, of course, it's no secret Trump has called Mamdani a communist. He's also said, look, this could impact some of the funding that we're able to offer to New York City. There was this kind of somber mood yesterday at Cuomo's results party. Some there suggesting that, perhaps Trump might send the National Guard in. Perhaps that's a bit far-fetched. However, he could ultimately decide to retaliate or be quite problematic when it comes to the New York mayor.
Absolutely. I mean, he shut down this Gateway Tunnel project, and he used which was designed to rebuild tunnels that go between New York and New Jersey, and that became a factor in the New Jersey governor's race. Look, we know that this president will exercise as much power as he thinks he can get away with and wait for the courts to catch up to him. And now, having said that, he was relatively aggressive towards New York, even under Eric Adams, who was, supposedly a kind of ally to him. He pushed to undo New York's congestion pricing plan. Having said that, they didn't actually undo it. So maybe, you could argue that they could have done more. Donald Trump is always going to be a wild card. At the end of the day, I don't think Mamdani, wants Trump to punish New York. But if he does try to punish New York, that will only help Mamdani because he will be seen as standing up to this president who is deeply unpopular at this point with New Yorkers.
Yeah, just a final question for you. We can look at Mamdani's win. We can also look at those victories that we made reference to in both Virginia and New Jersey. There's clearly a political mood shift, if you will, in the country. Just ahead of these upcoming midterms, what should we be looking out for?
Well, obviously, Democrats need to flip the House. It's very important that they do that. They are facing a headwind because of redistricting efforts all across the country, where Democrats are trying to counter the efforts of Republicans. Republicans in Texas are changing the district lines to give themselves more seats in the House of Representatives. Last night, California voted. They had to ask their voters to do it, but they, in a huge victory, almost 2-1, supported Democratic efforts to redistrict. Virginia is also a place where redistricting is on the table in favor of Democrats, and they won huge elections, not only for governor, but in the state legislature. So it looks like Democratic voters want this to happen. At the end of the day, the Senate is a bigger climb. I don't know that they have enough winnable seats in the Senate, but that's what we're looking at next year, really, is House and Senate races.
All right, Ian Reifowitz, thanks very much for speaking to us today. You're a distinguished professor of history at the sunny Empire State University and the co-author of Riling Up the Base. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.